Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, Cellarcast, episode 114. This one's coming out late because I have not wanted to do anything for this whole week. I was working for like 3 weeks straight on that last video on arcades, and I don't feel like doing anything else. I do want to get this one out before, the end of the week. But, no rush. No rush at all. I've kind of just been taking the last couple days to sort of chill out. I haven't even really been playing any game. What was I playing? I was kind of playing more Hollow Cure and stuff like that. I'll talk about like at least one of the games I was playing. But I do have a little bit of stuff to talk about. I guess I'll just, there's no real questions from last time, so I will jump into a hobby that I guess it's a hobby that I kind of like want to resume. Back in like 2020, like 2020, 2021-ish, I got really into watching old horror and science fiction movies from like the 50s through 70s, because I really like pulp science fiction stuff and old horror stuff, and I think it's fun. I always like that. I got back in my right behind me. I have a magazine. Those, like, what were those called? I can't remember. The cover's like, it's so old. Like these old monster horror magazines. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was like a commemorative thing, or not commemorative. It was like an annual monster magazine. Is it Monster Mash? Classic Monsters, something like that. It's really old with all the it's basically falling apart, and I think I got it from a friend of mine back in kindergarten. I visited him in his basement. He was like, "Yeah, we got this thing, you want it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's cool, it's awesome." And it's got I haven't flipped through it in forever. That famous interview, that famous disaster interview with that guy. Hang on, what is it? I remember the band was called the Box Boys. Interview. Where's the man? Where's the man? How long do I want to look for this? I'm gonna pause this so I can look this up. Found it. I just spent like 10 minutes searching for this stupid interview. It's Billy Bob Thornton on QTV. Look up Billy Bob Thornton blow up on QTV. It's like a 20-minute interview. Hilarious. One of the most awful interviews you'll ever see, and not on the interviewer, just on the interviewee being fucking insane. And he's just immediately completely uncooperative. It's almost like he's on something. It's like he's on some kind of drug. I don't know what, but something. And he's just decided to be fucking pissed off the entire time and tank the whole interview. It was for his band, the Box Masters, not the Box Boys, the Box Masters. And he just starts rambling on about, the interviewer asked him if he was into music when he was a kid, if he played an instrument as a kid, and just a really simple question, and Thornton just starts talking about a contest he entered for the magazine Famous Monsters of Filmland, which I believe is the one I have back there. Anyway, I got really into watching those because a lot of them are public domain. A lot of these old movies are public domain or very easy to find online. And then they kind of got cut short. A lot of hobbies that I was doing kind of got short. Well, I don't know why that's hard to say. Got cut short for me in 2021 because I had a bunch of anxiety problems. And I don't remember what it was, but I was watching. I watched Red Letter Media's review on Mars Attacks, and I was like, oh man, I really like this old pulpy sci-fi aesthetic. Let me go check out, because I made an IMDb account when I was really into watching these films, and I had a big list, and I was like, why don't I maybe check one of these out. So I just looked at like the next one that I had up. Excuse me. The next one that I hadn't watched on my list, which is a horror film from 1977 called The Sentinel, which was adapted from a book of the same name. The Sentinel is a weird movie. It feels like a pretty interesting book that is adapted very poorly. So here's the basic premise of The Sentinel, and I'm actually going to not go into the basic premise. I'm actually going to go into the whole movie, because it's not like too complicated. Well, it sort of is. I'm just going to spoil it, because you're not going to go watch it. Go watch it right now after I give the basic premise. Or don't, because it's not like the best thing ever. The Sentinel is about this woman. She's played by Christina Rains. There's a bunch of like random famous actors in this movie. They've got let's pull up the cast. Christina Rains is the main character. They got Chris Sarandon, Ava Gardner, Martin Balsam, John Carradine, Jose Ferrer, Arthur Kennedy, Burgess Meredith, Sylvia Miles. Who else do I recognize? Beverly D'Angelo. And then also random, again, 1977, the first appearance of Tom Berenger, the first on-screen appearance of Tom Berenger, a young Christopher Walken, and a young Jeff Goldblum. He just shows up in one scene, and I was like, is it Jeff Goldblum? And he plays like a minor character in the film. And none of these people have anything to do in this movie. They hardly do anything. Most of them, at least. Burgess Meredith is pretty delightful. So the idea is that she is shopping. They live in New York. She and her, Christina Rains and her boyfriend, they live in New York. Her boyfriend is an attorney, I believe. And they're apartment hunting. When the movie opens, they're apartment hunting separately. Well, you're only seeing them do it separately. And as you kind of learn, he's shopping for them, and she is shopping for herself. She's kind of thinking about maybe getting a place on her own and not living together with him. I'm not sure if there's more detail about it in the book, but at least in the film they make it seem as if there's no serious problems in their relationship. She just kind of wants a little more. She just wants a little space to herself. She's like, okay, and they they make it pretty clear, at least, that they are still pretty late. They're still in love with each other. He wants to get married. She is a little hesitant, So they're apartment hunting and all this is kind of gets interrupted when she gets a call. She gets news that her father has died. So she goes back to her family's estate for the funeral, and she's walking around the house, this big mansion out in the countryside, and she's walking around the house. She's on the top floor. She goes out to the balcony, and she looks down at like the front of the house, and she kind of just, it's so weird. I didn't understand what was happening at first. She's having like a flashback. I can totally see this happening in a book. I can see this happening, being a lot clearer in a book, but in the film it's like a weird shift from literalism to a little like abstract, because she basically sees herself as like a teenager. It's still her playing. It's the same actress, so the age is like they just kind of make her hair longer. It's just wearing like a longer wig. I guess she's supposed to be like a teenager in this flashback where she's like seeing herself down on the street, like coming home. She's getting dropped off with some from like her friends are dropping her off or something, and then she sees herself coming up the stairs and then walking down the hall and knocking on her father's bedroom door, and she's like, Dad, I'm home from school. And then he doesn't answer, so she opens the door, and her elderly father, is having a cake sex orgy on his bed. I guess cheating on her mom, because she goes, "How are these women?" It's like he's with these two fat naked women, and they're shoving cake into each other's mouths on this bed. And so Christina Rain is freaking out. She's like, "What the fuck is that?" Her father gets up, and he just like, get the fuck out of here. And he like, she's wearing a crucifix necklace, and he like rips it off for some reason. She runs to the bathroom and pulls out a razor blade and starts going to town. And I was, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? This happens in the span of like 30 seconds. It's really out there. It's oh my god, it's like really, and they show it on screen and everything, and I was like, what the fuck? This is a little odd and random. It comes up later in the film. It feels again like something that's kind of lost in adaptation. This film has a lot of that. The way it's edited is a little herky-jerky. There'll be scenes where I could imagine, like, because the start of the movie, okay, so basically, after that, she is having dinner, after she has this flashback up to this traumatic event from her childhood. She's having dinner with her mom after the funeral, and she asks her mom why she put up with her father being such a piece of shit, and her mom says, well, I just didn't have anywhere else I could go. And this really strikes her, and you can tell it affects her a lot, because the next thing that happens is she basically tells her boyfriend that she is resolved to getting her own place. And he says, oh, so you're really committed to that then? And she says, well, I just don't want, I don't want to be left with nowhere to go. And he's just like, oh, that sounds dramatic. What the... And she never tells him the story. She never tells him what happened. This is just kind of an internal thing for her. But this was a very affecting experience and conversation she had, where she wants to be on her own. She wants to be independent. She's worried about being tied down to someone. She's she has a job as a model. That's her thing. She's a model. She does like TV commercials and stuff. And that's when you see Jeff Goldblum, because he's like the photographer that she works with frequently, and he's just kind of there. Also, every single line he has is ADR'd. Every single line. This movie has some bad ADR. Like, you can tell the mic setup was fucked up. Like, they didn't block it properly. Apparently, everyone hated the director on this production, and just little things like that are like, yeah, it seems like he had a very chaotic, kind of unplanned, messy directing style, because from line to line, it will change from the actual recorded audio to ADR, where it's like clearly someone dubbing over in post, and it's extremely noticeable. Even on, I watched a copy that was on archive.org, which it's kind of a crappy VHS rip. It's fine. It's got a little bit of hum, a little distortion at a few parts, but it was overall pretty okay. But even there, you could tell, like, oh yeah, this was not what they recorded initially. It is a completely different sound. Not really any care to making it sound like it's actually in the room. Like, there's no echo. It's such an amateur thing. And yeah, Jeff Goldblum, like, all of his lines are ADR'd. It's extremely noticeable with everyone. It's constant throughout the film. And you can always tell, because it's when a character is facing a little bit away from the camera, and you can tell, oh, they didn't have the microphone set up so that it could pick it up when they turned around. Oh, man. Anyway, so she finds this real estate agent who starts showing her around some apartments, and she gets this apartment that overlooks I don't know what river it is. It's through New York. I guess the Hudson? It overlooks the river. It's this brick brown brick building, and she decides to move into here. Very interesting, kind of cool looking apartment complex, actually, in the interior, which was actually the all the interior stuff inside the apartment is the same building. It's the exact same building, so that's kind of neat. It's the exterior and interior. It was all just a really cool location that they found. And once she enters this apartment, strange things begin to happen. There's an old man, an old priest on the very top floor, who spends all of his days looking out the window, even though he's blind, just all day observing the Sentinel. You might infer is who he is from the title. She has these strange neighbors, and and things keep getting weirder. That's the basic synopsis. If that sounds interesting to you, you can go look it up right now and watch it for free on archive.org. The Sentinel from 1977. And also, I guess that VHS copy is the uncensored version. This movie has a lot of Catholic stuff in it, and also nudity, and all of that was only really shown in the theatrical release and the much later DVD Blu-ray releases, and I think a couple VHS copies. But for when it had to be re-edited for TV, where they had to cut out a lot of stuff like that. They had to cut out a lot of the stuff with the church and the nudity, which, from what I can tell, just like, spitballing it in my mind, would make the movie extremely hard to follow. Those scenes are actually very important to the plot. So here's what's going on in the apartment. She's got these weird neighbors. She's got Burgess Meredith coming down. He has this cat and a bird, and he's very eccentric. She goes down to the first floor, and there's these lesbians living there. They are only ever referred to as the lesbians, just by any other character throughout the film. The lesbians. And that's Beverly D'Angelo and Sylvia Miles. And they are just weird, and she sits down at their apartment to have, like, some tea, and... and they come out and they're just kind of weird, and Beverly D'Angelo doesn't say anything. She doesn't speak. She never speaks. She's a mute. And then Sylvia Miles leaves, and Beverly D'Angelo just starts masturbating in front of Christine Raids. And she's like, what the fuck is going on here? And she goes through the whole thing. She goes through the whole, the whole 9 yards. Right in front of her. And Christina Raids is just sitting there really uncomfortable the whole time. And then Sylvia Miles gets back, and she's like, and Christina Raids is like, so, what do you two do? And she goes, we fondle each other. And Christina Raids is like, well, okay, I gotta get going. And she just picks up her groceries and leaves. It's hilarious. It's so weird. They have this weird, very uncomfortable birthday party scene. You can look that up, I think, on YouTube. Like, she attends, like, a weird birthday party for a cat. And there's all these strange kind of people there who used to live in the building, or they do live in the building and all that, and just kind of these weird people, and it's a very uncomfortable scene that she has nightmares about later on, this weird, like, psychosexual nightmare about this birthday party. So she goes and talks to the real estate agent, and she's like, well, I have all these weird neighbors, and just, oh, and the other thing, she wakes up in the middle of the night, and there's despite the fact that no one lives in the apartment above her, she's hearing stomping and the rattling and scraping of the metal, and she really freaks her out. So she goes, okay. So she goes to the real estate agent. She's like, what? She's just telling her about all this weird stuff and all these neighbors she has. And her neighbor, the real estate agent, is like, "What are you talking about? No one lives in that apartment complex except for you and the priest." And she's like, wow. And that's the point where the movie starts to get pretty interesting, around like the 30-40 minute mark. Because this plot thread is really interesting. Like, what the fuck is going on in this apartment? Because she goes back with the agent, and she goes into these apartments which she's been in before, and they were like fully furnished and lived in and all that. And now, as soon as she goes back to them with her, they're these decrepit, like obviously abandoned, covered in cobwebs, totally, all most of the furniture's been removed. There's just some stuff left behind and completely abandoned, right? And the agent is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, okay, something fucking weird is going on. So she's asleep one night. She wakes up because she hears the stomping from upstairs again. And this is a pretty good scene. Okay. The soundtrack in this movie can be really bad. It's really weird and out of place feeling. It's like strangely grand and triumphant in scenes that should not be, like, that are just very normal and typical. It's really weird. But during the spooky scenes, there's some pretty good soundtrack, I think. A little cheesy, but I like that. And she gets up, and this is like a legitimately pretty good horror scene. I feel like a classic horror scene in an otherwise sort of sloppily executed film in a lot of ways. She gets up, she's just in her like sexy little nightgown with like the fucking one of the straps hanging down. She just takes a knife and a flashlight, which is great, and she decides to start walking up. She's gonna go investigate. She's gonna go into that apartment, and it's pretty creepy. It's all dark and scary, and the soundtrack is like decently atmospheric. And she's going up, and she's walking up the stairs, and suddenly she sees Burgess Meredith's cat. The cat, and it's like eating the bird, and it's like hissing at her, and it's kind of freaky. It's pretty spooky. It's a freaky little scene. The cat runs off with the bird, and she goes to the apartment. She opens the door, and she's walking through. And you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, God. It's like the tension's great. The build-up is fantastic. And she's walking through. She walks like through a hallway, like through a curtain. And then she hears like this sound coming from down the hallway from behind her after she's like entered into the next room, and she like hides behind the door, and you just see this fucking weird, ghostly pale figure like walking quickly, like quick stepping through the room, and it's what the fuck, and it like spooks her, and she, for some fucking reason, she decides to like investigate further, and it's her father. It's like her corpse father, like he's dead, like a zombie or something, and she like stabs him. And she like stabs him and fucking cuts his nose off, and she's all covered in blood. She runs out. She goes to the phone booth that's outside the apartment building, and then she like calls the hospital, and she's in the hospital for a few days. So after she got the apartment, she's been having these little weird health things. Like, she's been fainting. She's just kind of out of it. There's a scene where they're trying to film a commercial, and she just keeps fucking it up in like a really minor way. Like they just need her to like set the bottle down for the wine they're promoting, like so that it's the label's facing the camera. But she can't do that right, and he's like, everyone's like, what is up with her? And then she like has a full-on faint, and she's having all these health problems, and now she shows up to the hospital. She's completely delirious. She's covered in blood, which they later discover is her own blood. There's a little connection. It's her own blood. She's saying that she stabbed her father. She doesn't. Everyone's like, what the fuck is going on with Christina Rains? And then the film after this kind of, it hits this kind of, that's a high point of the movie. And then it hits this sort of like odd bit where they're trying... Okay, when I say that this movie has some issues in adaptation, there's some things that to me seem pretty clear. Like, the way it's edited, especially in the first act of the film, there's a lot of ground to cover. You gotta establish, them apartment hunting, the relationship between them, her job. You gotta do this whole sequence with her the funeral and all that, and then her getting the apartment. And it's actually like a lot of plot stuff to cover. And I can imagine in a book that could be covered pretty efficiently. There's transitions in this film that are very awkward, that are very like sudden, and you really have to fill in the gaps in between. Excuse me. And I can imagine that in a book being smoothed over with some internal narration or external narration, just something. The things that writing a book offers you, that you can just kind of say, we'd been apartment hunting for, a few months, and then you can just cover that. In a film, you got to show that. You have to find a way to show that visually, or you got to work it into dialogue somehow. And that's one way that writing a book is easier than making a film, I guess. Or it's one advantage you have. There's other things where, like, I don't know if the book drags a little bit at the same point, but in the movie at least, they have to establish... So the mystery is, what the hell is going on in this apartment complex? Is she seeing things? Is she crazy? Is there something supernatural? Is it even something else? And there's also a number of red herrings that they have to establish with other characters. Like, they have to establish this thing with the husband, or sorry, not the husband, the boyfriend. He has this kind of suspicious history of all of his... He has like 2 former wives, and they both committed suicide or something like that. He's got a bit of a bad omen about him. And this whole, like, the police chief suspects him of being a shady guy, and the police chief's assistant is Christopher Walken, who plays a character named Rizzo. Christopher Walken plays a character named, like, Detective Rizzo, which I can't believe is real. He's the Rizzler. And Christopher Walken, there's a lot of time spent establishing the suspiciousness of the boyfriend. And you're like, they've got this much going, like, is this going to amount to anything? Or is this just meant to, like, be a red herring? And Christopher Walken, it just kind of stands there. It's bizarre. He just stands there. Who's the police chief? Eli Wallach, Detective Gats. His name is Gats. Gats and Rizzo? Come on. They just kind of, like... He just stands there, like, he doesn't say anything, and it's super weird, because they keep cutting to his reaction shots like he's going to do something. And then he never does. He never becomes important in the plot. He has maybe 2 lines. And I'm pretty sure one of them is... it's really strange. Yeah, the movie really drags at this sort of 3/4 mark, or like around the midway during the second act. And then it kind of gets interesting again. Christina Rains, she gets, she starts going to, she starts going to church, and she's approached by this kind of creepy, ominous feeling kind of priest who tells her to, like, embrace Christ and all that. And you're like, what's going on there? The boyfriend starts investigating the, who's the boyfriend played by? Chris Sarandon, that's him. He starts investigating, like, the all the people connected to the apartment, and that's pretty neat. That's interesting stuff. So, like, he goes to the church because he's curious about this priest guy. Eventually, it culminates in him breaking into hiring a guy that he knows. It's kind of like to set up that he's a little shady, or just like one of these details that the boyfriend's a little shady. He knows like a professional lock picker. They go to the apartment they go to the church. They go to like the church offices, like the archdiocese offices or something, and break in. And then he like looks through all the files and discovers something really strange. He finds that that same apartment in that same building has been occupied consistently by like religious priests or nuns for like 100 years or something like that. And 200 years, something like that. Every single time one of them dies, they're replaced by another one. And then in the replacements files, every single one of them was living a relatively ordinary life before they decided to randomly drop everything and become a nun or a priest, and then they started living in this apartment, and then would later die by suicide, and only to be replaced by the next one. And that's like, that's fucking weird. And you're sort of starting to get a picture for what's going on, that there's a connection between Christina Rains and this priest, and that there might be a thing that's gonna happen between them. Also, all of the people who Christina Rains finds out lives there have apparently died. They're all like dead, and also murderers, like criminals, murderous, horrible criminals while they were living. So she was interacting with like their ghosts or something, is all I can tell. And no one else ever met these people. It's just her, which is part of the like, oh, is she crazy kind of part. Although that's not going to be what it is. It's not going to be that she's insane. They just have to set it up so no one can believe her. So the boyfriend is like, what the? Oh shit. Oh god. And he like puts together this pattern to figure out when the priest is going to die, which is going to be when Christina Rains is going to succeed him as the Sentinel. So that kicks off the climax of the film, which is where he gets one of her friends to like watch over her until midnight. He needs her to just stay away from the apartment until the day is over, so they can break the chain, and she won't be like taken in by whatever this sort of ritual is. He goes to the apartment with like a gun, and he confronts the priest, ends up trying to strangle him, gets smacked in the head by someone else who's off camera. Christina Rains passes out at a party. They're like, oh my god, put her to bed. Turns out that randomly the bedroom that they put her in has a door that just leads to like the maintenance shaft, like the maintenance stairs of the building for some reason. Not even like a fire escape or something, just like this straight up like the whole staircase. She goes back to the apartment, and once she's in the apartment, so it turns out the boyfriend, before he got whacked, he finds this thing in a wall. He rips like part of the wall off, and it's like beware all ye who enter, or something like that. And he basically finds out that the apartment it's built over the entrance to hell. It's built over the entrance to hell. And Christina Rains she's been picked to be the next in line to succeed the priest, who is that's John Carradine, by the way. She's gonna succeed him as the next Sentinel to watch over, basically guard the entrance to hell. And that's why all of these strange people live in this building, as they're actually like the spirits. They're the demonic remnants of those people. So Christina Rains, she's like walking around, she's like going. I don't know. She's just compelled to go up to like the top floor to where the priest was, and she gets like almost there. I forgot what happens. Oh, so the evil spirits are trying to get her to kill herself so that she breaks the cycle. They're trying to torture her into suicide. And this begins a pretty freaky sequence. A pretty memorable sequence, I have to say, where the denizens of hell emerge from the building. And apparently for this sequence, actual people with deformities were hired to play these demons, which is like, I mean, like, I guess, is that insensitive? Is that like in poor taste? It gave them work, I guess. Like, I mean, like, what else? Yeah, you're gonna be playing a horrific demon. Because, like, you're watching it, you're like, oh, wow, that doesn't look like prosthetics. That looks like someone... That looks like a person, like a real person. Some of it is prosthetic, but a lot of it is like, oh, yeah, no, that's a person with some kind of deformity. Is that the polite way to say it? That's what they have, you know? And they're all, like, so she's, like, running up she's running up the stairs trying to escape them. And there's just more on the way, and no one's really trying to hurt her. They can't really affect her. Only she can affect herself. She ends up getting to the top of the building, and the Burgess Meredith hands her a knife, and he's like, "Do it, yes!" And then all of a sudden, it's the priest, and he's and the other priest who she met earlier. And they're there. Oh yeah, so there's this like twist thing where she hides in her apartment at first, and her boyfriend comes out, and you're like, didn't he just get whacked? And he tells her, he just explains the plot to her about like how the Sentinel thing exists and all that, and then he's like, yeah, I tried to. Oh yeah, I forgot. He tried to. Yes, he tried. No, I mentioned that. He's like, I tried to strangle the priest upstairs. And then I got killed. Someone smashed my head in. And I've gone to hell because I actually killed my ex-wives. You're like, okay, I guess that was a real thing then? They could have, like... I mean, I feel like maybe could have skipped that. You could have, like, left out all the intrigue, quote-unquote intrigue, about his ex-wives' deaths. And just been like, yeah, he went to hell because he tried to kill the priest. Like, I would have accepted that. But no, they had to add in this whole subplot that didn't really amount to much. Anyway. So he's part of the denizens of hell now. And at the last minute, the priest saves her. And she becomes the new Sentinel. Which is a bit of a... Is it a dour ending? I mean, it keeps the denizens of hell from spilling out onto Earth, so that's something. That's something, I guess. Overall, a strange movie. Interesting in a lot of ways. Very 70s. She's wearing some big-ass bell-bottom jeans. It's very epic. There's a lot of things about it that are neat. The book is probably cool. The film it mainly falls short in being a little bit boring, being a little, I don't know, it doesn't flow very well, which means that whatever atmosphere it could have had, it could have been a lot better than it ends up being, because a lot of the atmosphere gets lost due to the weird kind of sudden scene shift. It's not even a tone shift, it's just scene transitions. It's very it feels a little disjointed. You have to fill in a lot of events in between, like what's going on and what happened in between these two scenes. There's a lot of time spent that I kind of glossed over of Christina Rains is feeling funky, and then something happens, and then that's a little weird, and then she feels funky again, and then something happens. He's having funky, wonky, whittle dreams. Seems like a poor adaptation of a interesting book. And apparently, dude, the IMDb trivia for this is hilarious. Let me go look up the trivia real quick, because I was reading through it. Jeff Goldblum was dubbed in all but one scene. Apparently Christina Rains... Oh, yeah, so that's the other problem. She does not give a good performance in this film. There aren't many good performances. I think the best one is probably Burgess Meredith, who's like the weird neighbor, who's sort of the leader. He's sort of the main key guy in the film. Villain, I suppose. The boyfriend is okay. Everyone else is either like just a little meh, or they have nothing to do. Christina Rains clearly does not want to be there, and apparently hated the director. Let's see. Christina later said this may not have been for the best, however, as she didn't like Winner, the director, Michael Winner, his maddening approach to directing. The actress says she cried every day on her way to work and admitted in a recent interview that she has never watched the film due to the treatment she received on set. So fun. Yeah, so there's a really funny quote here from, I guess, the director's... Yeah, okay. Michael Winner says in his biography that some unions supported several crew members who refused to take their meal with the deformed people hired by the production and even demand a separate catering tent. Winner said he was full of shame because of this disgusting behavior. Yet in the Blu-ray commentary, he said he intended to eat with the deformed people in protest, but ended up not doing so because it was so hot outside that day. I have so much compassion for these people who have been shunned by society because of the way that they were born. I'm not going to eat with them because it's too hot. They can go suffer outside in the heat. Oh yeah, the original author also hated Winner. Jeffrey Convitt says Winner went from subtle and scary to unsubtle and gross. Oh yeah, Jeffrey Convitt's he's the author, claims that the casting of an ensemble of older stars, Burgess Meredith, Ava Gardner, John Carradine, etc., was a Universal Studios decision, since they had success with an ensemble in the movie Airport. So that's weird. It's like the Airport came out, and they were like, let's do that. Let's just do that again. It worked with Airport. Jeffrey Convitt claimed director Michael Winner's response to most of his criticisms were, "Stop worrying about it, go find some girls." Jeffrey Convitt, the author of the book, is like, I really didn't like how you adapted my book. I think you did a really bad job of it. And he said, I think you need to go Sentinel some pussy, dude. I think you need to go find some... Who get laid? Jeffrey Convitts. Yeah, just super funny. The film debut of Tom Berenger. He appears at the very end of the movie with him and his character's girlfriend. Sorry, him and his character, his girlfriend. They appear at the apartment, and they're gonna be the next in line. They're gonna be one of them's gonna be the next Sentinel. Richard Dreyfuss has a random brief cameo. Again, just so many weird random actors in this movie. For this, like, it's trying to be, it probably could have been as good as like an Exorcist type movie. But was not meant to be because of one funny guy. Anyway, is this a movie podcast? Yeah, I guess it is, because next up I want to talk about Atlanta. Sorry, I mean Atlantis. Yeah, so Kat and I decided to watch Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Atlanta, the Lost Empire. The 1990? When is this movie from? When is this thing from? 2001. The 2001 Disney animated film. I could have sworn it was DreamWorks. I could have sworn, because I feel like it always gets conflated with, it's like this, Treasure Planet, and Road to El Dorado, which I guess both of... I guess this and Treasure Planet are both Disney. But hey, much like Treasure Planet, this was around the turn of the century Disney animated science fiction film that bombed horribly. However, unlike Treasure Planet, it does not seem to be a conspiracy. So if you know anything about the history of Treasure Planet, my favorite Disney movie, because of course it is, that film was undermarketed / horribly marketed in what it did receive, because, well, it's not confirmed, but essentially it was this, like, the dream project of the two directors, or these two, like, specific people at Disney really wanted to make a science fiction reimagining of Treasure Island, and that was their dream project. And it just kept getting pushed back and back and back and back, despite the fact that they had made a bunch of successful things like the Disney Renaissance era. I think they were pretty heavily involved in. Kept getting pushed back because they just didn't want to do it. And then by the time that Treasure Planet eventually came out, Disney had already acquired Pixar, and they, I guess, just kind of wanted Pixar to be their lapdogs for animated films now. So they were like... Basically, the conspiracy is that the film was marketed poorly to intentionally make it bomb as, one, I guess maybe a tax write-off. It's actually a fairly expensive movie to make. And two, to convince... To create a narrative that mass audiences were not interested in traditional 2D animation anymore. They just wanted that 3D stuff, baby. A Bug's Tale. That's what the people like. They like bug tales. Wasn't it Bug's Life? Why do I think it was A Bug's Tale? Sorry, Bug's Life. That's the conspiracy. Just wait, fact, Treasure Planet's a great movie. It's a great movie. Atlantis, curiously enough, it seems like they had a lot banking on it. I like to go read about the production and stuff like that on movies that I think are interesting. Which is why I just spent like 40 minutes talking about the Sentinel from 1977, a movie no one cares about. And Atlantis, they had a lot of stuff planned for it. They had an animated TV series that was already in pre-production by the time that the film released. That was going to be like a sequel. Like it was going to be like a follow-up to the movie. They had multiple rides planned, like and attractions planned at Disneyland. And I think maybe even some other stuff, but there was like a decent amount of banking on the movie being actually being successful, which is kind of surprising. If I just go on this Wikipedia article and I do a Control F for land? Yes. A result of the film's underperformance, Disney canceled a planned spin-off animated television series called Team Atlantis, an underwater Disneyland attraction, and a volcanic Magic Kingdom attraction based on it. There was going to be a TV show and 2 park attractions based off of this one movie, and then totally out the window. And I think that's a bit of a shame. I think it's a shame that this movie flopped. I know that this is one of those, like, it's earned a cult following in recent years, and I can see it, and it makes a lot of sense, and I think I can kind of pin a little bit down on maybe why it underperformed. So Atlantis: The Lost Empire is like in this weird kind of middle ground where it's a little too, I wouldn't say it's too adult, but it's more adult than a lot of stuff that was coming out for children or families at the time. There's a lot more action. Apparently the crew wore these shirts that said like Atlantis, less music, more explosions, which is pretty funny. Yeah, fewer songs, more explosions, due to the film's plan as an action adventure. There is no music in this. It's not a musical, unlike, again, most of the other Disney films up to this point, including even Treasure Planet has... doesn't it have that Creed? Does Treasure Planet have that Creed song? I haven't seen it in forever. Treasure Planet... Does it have Can You Take Me Higher? Oh no, it has I'm Still Here by the Goo Goo Dolls. That's where it is. And Always Know Where You Are. Is that what it is? Wait, Treasure Planet Goo Goo Dolls. Yeah, no, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's Goo Goo Dolls. Yep, okay. None of that in Atlantis at all. It's just film score. So no musical angle to it at all. There's a lot of action in the film. There are several on-screen deaths, like just straight up deaths that occur. Not gory. There's no like blood. There's no real detail to it, but it's like someone's in a plane and the plane fucking explodes, or they get crushed by something, and it's like, or they fall down a big ravine, and it's like, oh yeah, no, the death is a very real thing in this movie. It is very present, and in fact, there is mass death at several points where a lot of people die, and it's a little, it's not like, when I say, it isn't because it's necessary. It's a little shocking. It is a little shocking, actually, just for a Disney film. It's more intense than I was expecting. It's there's a lot of sexy women in this film. Really, too. There's like the what would you call, what's her name? I forgot what her name. I feel like Helga or something. Some kind of Russian lady. And immediately the scene that she appears in, it's when like the main character goes back to his apartment and all of his stuff's been cleared out because he's basically been picked by this philanthropist guy to go explore Atlantis. And he really doesn't have a choice in the matter, which is fine by him because he wants to go to Atlantis anyway. And he opens the door and just like everything's gone, and then she's just kind of sitting in his apartment, and just immediately they're playing like the saxophone. The sexy phone. We were both. So Kat and I had never seen this movie before. Did I mention that we watched it together? Because we were both. She was curious about it. And I was like, all right, I'll watch Atlantis with you. And we'd never seen it before, so we were kind of surprised at how like overtly. It's not overt. It's like an undertone, but it's like pretty strong. I feel like even a kid could pick up on that, which is amusing, I guess. There's straight up like a scene where Kida. Okay, should I just talk about the? I'll talk about the movie. Well, no, there's a scene where one of the sexy lady characters just like she doesn't get completely undressed, but she undresses enough to have like a moment because they're gonna go swimming. So the basic premise of Atlantis is it's a very Jules Verne inspired science fiction adventure story. It's about Michael J. Fox, who plays... I don't even remember what his name is. What is his name? Milo James... Milo. Pfft, yeah. So, no, that's all. That's a little too obvious. Milo James Thatch, and he's a linguist. He's a cartographer. He works at the Smithsonian, and he is convinced that Atlantis is real, and he's found proof that it exists and where to find it. And he's basically, no one takes him seriously. He gets laughed out of the room. He works at when I say he works at the Smithsonian, he like operates the boiler room, so it's like an underdog kind of thing. He threatens to quit if because no one takes him seriously. And then he goes back to his apartment, and he's been wow banana wow, and she's like, you have to go to Atlantis. So he goes to this philanthropist guy's big mansion estate, and they're talking, and the guy explains that he was a friend of Milo's grandfather, who was also a big Atlantis truther. Excuse me. And he's like, I want you to go find it for science or whatever. And Milo's like, well, okay. So you get introduced to this crew of characters that's going to be in this big ship, this big submarine. And already it's like, this is a lot of characters to be introducing. Apparently the film's original script had more characters that were cut, and I think it's probably a good thing, because the film is already a little bit crowded. I think it works fine. It ends up pulling it off. But it gets pretty close to the edge of like having a little too much going on for the runtime, because it's not a very long movie. It's like 96 minutes. There's all these, this colorful cast of characters who have different roles on the team, and everyone is very visually distinct. I should mention the art style was based off of the work of Mike Mignola, aka the creator of Hellboy. So the characters are very geometric. They're made of a lot of sharp, angular shapes. Tend to be very boxy. Even the curvaceous ladies have like their hips will just be like this just hard angle, like V shape kind of drawing. Everyone has very, very sharp, angular features and things like that, with a couple exceptions, like the mole guy, who is French. He's a French man, and he loves dirt. And he's very round, and he's a little gremlin man. And he loves digging in the dirt. And that's, I guess, to just... Yeah, a very pleasing, visually pleasing art style, I think. Pretty distinctive. It has a very distinctive look to it. So they go in this submarine. There's like the leader of this group. This leader of this group, who's he played by? James Garner. Okay, I thought I recognized his name. And he's the leader of the group, and they all go down into the ocean, and they're exploring, and then you got a little bit of... There's honestly surprisingly not a lot of time on the ship. One of the things I think this movie could have benefited from is a little bit of, like, decompression. I wish it was a little longer. Just, like, a little bit longer. With, like, a couple more scenes. It's kind of like they get on the ship, there's, like, one scene of Milo meeting some of the crew members, and then immediately action scene, and the action scene results in the whole fucking ship exploding, and everyone escaping in these little pods. So, immediately... like, hundreds dead. Just hundreds dead. Off, not shown directly, but you see the explosion. And of course, all the main characters and some extra faceless goons make it to Atlantis after some shenanigans, some adventurings, where again I think more people die in that. They end up meeting the Atlanteans, and then this is like I don't even know where this is. This is like around the halfway point of the movie. And the king of Atlantis wants them gone, but they want like a day there or something. And so, like, I think by the first scene where you met the philanthropist guy, I was like, one of these characters someone's going to get betrayed at some point in this film. Like, it's very clear it's going to be someone. It's either going to be him or it's going to be the leader of the group, the James Garner character. And yeah, shocker, that ends up being him, because he wants to do capitalism, and he wants shmonies, but not before we get a little bit of... Okay, so again, when I say decompressing, after they get to Atlantis, things happen a little too quickly. I wish there was like a few more scenes to establish a little bit more of the Atlantean culture, to invest the viewer a little bit more into it, and also the romance between Milo and Kita, because again, it's like service. It's just enough that I can believe it, but also it's been one day. So Kita is the daughter of the king, the Atlantean king, and she's apparently like 800 years old or 8,000. She's super old, but she doesn't seem like it. I don't know. She's like a sexy lady. And Milo's like, oh, they didn't tell me there'd be spicy brown women at the function. So they end up having this little connection and yada yada. And Kat thought it was adorable because Milo is a skinny, nerdy little white guy, and she was doing projection stuff. She's doing projecting things to me. And because he falls in love with a sexy little brown girl, and there was projection happening. So the romance is like, again, it's serviceable. I wish there was like 2 or 3 more scenes with them, just to have like a little bit more. I'm okay with a romance blossoming pretty quickly in movie time, but in universe, the fact that it's like, okay, it's been like a day, it's been like half a day from what it feels like, and they have some nice moments. They have things where he's explaining, you know, the other members of the crew to her, and telling her about stuff from the surface world, and then they go and help translate some ancient glyphs that so part of it, I believe it was in this am I mixing this up with something? I'm pretty sure I'm not. Egypt. I'll look up Egypt. Yep. So one of the producers said that part of the inspiration for the Atlantean civilization was this thing from history where when Napoleon entered Egypt and was discovering, you know, Egyptian civilization and all that, and their culture and their society, one of the things he noted was that there had been some kind of great loss of understanding of what their history was. And there's a quote here on the Wikipedia page from one of the producers. The people had lost track of their once great civilization. They were surrounded by artifacts of their former greatness, but somehow unaware of what they meant. So there'd been some sort of I'm not familiar with Egyptian history, but I guess at some point in Egyptian history, they had some kind of dark... I'm curious. Let me know. Let me know in the comments if you know anything about this. Some period where they lost a ton of information about their written language and history, which is why a lot of that had to be like translated and stuff way hundreds of years later. Stuff like the Rosetta Stone. And so that was kind of the basis for the Atlanteans, or that inspired the aspect of the Atlanteans, where they have this ancient, like, pretty grand culture with this sort of magical technology, and like power source that no one really understands it. No one knows how to use it. People don't really understand how to use. There's like these ancient artifacts and vehicles and stuff, but no one even knows how to really turn them on because no one can read the language. That's part of the which I liked this detail. No one can read the language in Atlantis. The only person who knows is Milo, because Milo has a book because he's been studying his whole life the traces of Atlantis that the people themselves don't have. So he's able to translate it and open the door to understanding like their history and stuff. And this also results partially in the big third act climax thing where betrayal. Every single one of the other characters betrays them because actually everyone's just in it for money. And then because the guy wants leader guy wants a power source that is used in Atlantis that's no one knows where it is, but it seems to like power the civilization. It's like the source of life. It's like the life stream from Final Fantasy VII, and he wants it. So they like go down, they find it using the things that Milo translates, and the life source is like, uh-oh, I'm scared. I'm gonna go zip zap zoop into Kita, and she's gonna turn into like a crystal person. And they're like, well, time to haul her off back up to the surface, I guess. And then climax things happen. Milo convinces the others to have a heart and not just be in it for the money, which I think I wish the movie in universe had taken a little bit more time, because they've been here for one day, and I'm sorry, for a lot of people that's not enough. That might not be enough. They should have had a little bit more time to interact with the people and plant the seeds of doubt about what they were doing or their motivations. Like a little bit of empathy. Again, he just kind of guilts them into it. And it feels a little bit external. It feels like a little bit like it's not really coming from them. He's just kind of guilting them. It's fine. It works. It's just a little fast, like a lot of things in the movie. And and then whoop. Ending action scene. Bunch of fucking people die. Sexy Russian lady gets crushed by a blimp, like a big hot air balloon thing that they're gonna escape up a volcano shaft with. And then the crystal thing, Kita stops being a crystal person, and then life is returned to Atlantis, and Milo is like, you guys can go, I think I'll stay here with my hot wife, my new hot wife that I met today. And they're like, alright, cool, we'll take like a bunch of gold and shit. And they go back up to the surface, and then no one ever learns of what really transpired down there. And apparently the last shot of this movie was the most I want to find the quote again on this Wikipedia page. I remember there's a quote from like the director or something about, let's see, animation. At the peak of its production, 350 animators, artists, and technicians were working on Atlantis at all three Disney animation studios. This movie's randomly, for some reason, it is shot in 35mm anamorphic, which means that it's like stretched. It's like stretched in a weird way, so things are like a little wider. It looks a little. It has like, I don't know. It hasn't. You can kind of tell it looks a little strange. Not bad, just a little interesting. There's a funny quote from Mike Mignola, who says, "I remember watching a rough cut of the film, and these characters have these big, square, weird hands. I said to the guy next to me, 'Those are cool hands.' And he says to me, 'Yeah, they're your hands. We had a whole meeting about how to do your hands.' It was so weird, I couldn't wrap my brain around it." Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you. I'm talking to you. The final pull-out scene of the movie. Ooh. Hey, there's no pulling out going on there. Immediately before the end title card was described by the directors as the most difficult scene in the history of Disney animation. So it's basically the shot where it starts on Milo and Kida, and then it pulls out. It zooms out from like where they're standing on like the big this big platform, and then the whole like island of Atlantis, and then even like outside of it, and it's this massive shot. It becomes this massive shot. Let's see. As the camera pulls away from them to reveal the newly restored Atlantis, it reaches the equivalent of an 18,000-inch piece of paper composed of many individual pieces of paper, 24 inches or smaller. Each piece was carefully drawn and combined with animated vehicles simultaneously flying across the scene to make the viewer see a complete, integrated image. Yeah, there's also like things flying around and like parallax effects, and it's like extremely complex. It's like a really large scale, super complex shot. It's a cool movie. I have to say that I liked it. I wish that it was a little longer. And when I say that it didn't do very well, and I sort of get it, it is like kind of an adult movie. I think that was one of the criticisms that it got, was it's a little too adult for like young children to like maybe fully get into, like for it to resonate with them. But it's also like for parents who aren't into animation, or for adults who aren't into animation specifically, it might not hold their interest. Like it might be a little too simplistic, because it is a pretty simple story, all things considered. The deepest that it really goes is colonialism bad, which is like, I mean Ferngully. Which is why I think it's become a cult classic, because, who does this film resonate with? Adults who like animation. It's adults who are really into animation and stuff. Big old nerds. And I'm calling you out specifically. But yeah, it's like, it's a pretty... Yeah, it's a cool movie. It's got some neat stuff going on. The visuals are... It doesn't feel like a Disney movie. I think that's the other thing. It doesn't really feel like a Disney film, and not just because of like the lack of whimsy, but the tone is just overall a lot... Excuse me. Disney didn't do that. Never really done that much in the way of like a full-on adventure film with no musical sequences, no stuff like that. Is Kida a Disney princess? Maybe she would be. I was gonna say like no princess angle where they could market it like that. It's sort of an oddball film in their repertoire of animated pictures. And I think for that reason, it's pretty interesting. Also, the fact that it's a pretty solid movie all around. The characters are pretty likable for, how many there are, and how not all of them have a ton of time, like, individually. Yeah, I don't know. There isn't, like, a whole lot to say about it. It's just sort of a kind of neat movie that I'm glad we watched. Also, apparently, that animated series... This movie has a sequel, but the sequel is not actually a movie. It's packaged as a movie, but really it's just like 3 episodes of the TV series that got made, and they're just combined together. And according to Kat, it's like absolute gobbledygook. Like, let me look Let me look at the sequel. Atlantis, Milo's Return. Oh man, this cover. Originally, Disney was developing a sequel titled Shards of Chaos, but it was abandoned once the Lost Empire was less successful than anticipated. The released sequel consists of 3 segments, which are Kraken, Spirit of the West, and Spear of Destiny. What the fuck? That isn't like the Spear of Destiny was the spear that the Roman soldier pierced Jesus' chest with when he was on the cross. Let's see. Is it actually about that? Hang on, Spear. Nope. It is not the actual Spear of Destiny. Asgard. What the fuck? It's like a Norse thing? An ancient spear called the Gungnir of Atlantean origin. What? Okay, that's weird. Yeah, it's just like 3 episodes tacked together. This, one of the episodes of Team Atlantis that was never animated featured an appearance by Demona from Gargoyles. What? That's weird. That's interesting. Okay. The episode itself is canon in the Gargoyles universe. The entire series, Team Atlantis, is not. How strange. So Gargoyles, it probably never affects anything, but Gargoyles considers this one single episode of Team Atlantis that was never produced to have happened, but not the rest of the series, just the characters as they exist in that episode. How strange. How bizarre. Anyway, funny little story that I stumbled upon today on Reddit. This is from like a day or two ago. Apparently, I was not aware of this. If you go try to play Manhunt, the 2003 classic, extremely subversive horror game, I would call it subversive in many ways, by Rockstar Games, if you go to play the Steam release of that, which was released in 2010, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, it doesn't. It's not just that it works because of compatibility issues. Like, there's a lot of very low effort ports, quote unquote, or just Steam releases of games on the platform, where they just throw the ROM up or whatever. They just throw the game up with no real extra features, no real modernizations. Oftentimes they'll just literally have it load up DOSBox, which is pretty funny. None of those are the issue with Manhunt. No, in fact, the problem with Manhunt on Steam is that the game doesn't. Okay, the game has to be pirated. So, Manhunt was a game from 2003, right? And in 2003, they used this funny little DRM software called SecuROM, which isn't really in use anymore because it basically, what SecuROM was, is that they needed, or at least one of the forms of it, it needs a CD. If the game is just being loaded as an executable file, it will not work. That triggers like, uh-oh, piracy alert. It needs to detect the actual disk for the game in your disk drive. However, ever since, in the last 10 years, disk drives have become almost, well, I wouldn't say non-existent, but pretty phased out by this point. And most PC games, I mean, Christ, if you walk into GameStop, can you even find disc PC games? I don't think so. They're pretty much all just on online marketplaces. So this poses a problem for game re-releases that used Securom. Almost feel like saying Sekiro, but no, Securom. This poses a problem because it requires the developers to go back in and actually put time and effort into removing the DRM. Well, Rockstar didn't want to do this, so what they did is, like 4 days before the game was set to be released on Steam, a prolific game cracking group called... Why is the name escaping? Jesus, smacked the heck out of my microphone. Razor 1911, a group called Razor 1911, uploaded a cracked version of the game with no DRM or anything like that. Nothing, none of that included. So you can just download it, and it worked tremendously. So Rockstar was like, uh-oh. Okay. So they basically just took... Actually, the timeline is really weird because it kind of implies... So Rockstar never actually went in and fixed the DRM issue for Manhunt. Yeah, no, I'm putting it together now. I thought I'd thought about this story enough to talk about it, but I guess I'm just a fucking idiot. What they did was they just threw up the Razor 1911 crack. They threw up the cracked DRM-free version of the game because it was easier. They were selling people a pirated version of the game. The difference being, of course, the no DRM. Well, they actually did this a couple times, namely with Midnight Club 2, and Max Payne 2. And they got caught doing this for Max Payne 2 on Steam, and they were so embarrassed that they removed the DRM, they removed the cracked versions and replaced it with the original executables. However, because of this, Manhunt, which was just this big sweeping change. Don't be selling people pirated copies of games. It's a bad PR. Manhunt has been broken on PC for like 10 years because of this. For over 10 years. Because it's the disc version of the game, which requires you to have the disc, and there's no disc. Which means, so when I say DRM, it trips the anti-piracy functions in the game. And this was back in the day when there was like a bunch of very creative, very funny, anti-piracy measures put into games. So, doors cannot be unlocked. Items cannot be interacted with. The game is literally unplayable. It is a soft lock. The game is soft locked from like the first room practically. You cannot advance at all. You literally have to pirate the cracked version of the game from the Razor guys. Which is absolutely absurd, and they've never done anything about this. And ironically, goes to show why piracy is a very necessary part of honestly just the industry in general, and many industries honestly. Because, yeah, this anti-piracy thing, it's really cool for, like, the first 2 years a game is out, and then after that, or, what if something changes? Like, people stop using CDs as their primary method of like, medium for playing a game. What if it's just the digital file? Tons of fucking problems. Take it from me, someone who has run into this with a number of older games where the developers thought that they were being very clever by putting in anti-piracy things, and it's like, wow, that must have made you a lot of money. That must have made you a lot of money back in 1985 when you released this game, and now it's like practically unplayable unless I find a version where someone's gone in and cracked it, which for more obscure games sometimes doesn't exist, which is really cool. When did I end? if you remember, this is DOS horror. This was more DOS horror. The second video I did, on retro spooky games. Waxworks was a game that literally, like, if you go, because GOG has a lot of these older games, and they will literally just sell cracked versions of the game. Like in that Waxworks release, they literally have. They tell you, like, on the store page, or somewhere in like a README, something like that. Hey, the game has basically been cracked, not to remove the anti-piracy segment at the start, where you have to like input a code from a fucking code wheel, like a physical code wheel that would come with the game. Jeez, that sounds future-proof. It's been set so that it's always the same passcode every single time, and you don't have to go through this ridiculous process of figuring out a cipher every single time you want to play the game. Yeah, annoying. Just it is a good time to bring up the myth. There's an oft-repeated myth that Nintendo, when Nintendo re-releases games on the Virtual Console, like old NES games, that they use pirated versions of those games, like pirated ROMs, because if you look into the game's code, it has, like the hex code, it has an INES header, and INES being the format for ROMs that you will download to play in emulators as if you were pirating them. Not true. Not actually. Well, it is true, but the analysis is wrong. So yes, they do have INES headers, which is what you would find in a pirated game, but that's because INES headers is like the .NES file type is just like the one. It's just the most popular one that exists. I don't think I've ever emulated an NES game that was not in a .NES file. Because it just so happened to be like developed by this guy who happens to be like the foremost authority on NES emulation. So now it is extremely ironic, right? It's extremely ironic that Nintendo, who famously hates emulators and pretends like they're illegal when they're not, and I don't think they are in any, at least not in America and not in Japan, I don't think, that they would just use an emulator with like an emulated file format. There is a shred of irony there, but no, the idea that Nintendo sells pirated games is not true. Also, no NES games have anti-piracy measures. Just like none of them. Like there isn't really such a thing as a cracked version of an NES game. It's just the game, and it's been formatted to be like a digital file with the .NES format, with an INES header. Yeah, and then there was so in this thread on r/games, this all originates from a gentleman named Silent on Steam. On Twitter. I assume they're also on Steam, because they have a copy of Midnight Club 2, which I don't know if it's even available on Steam anymore, but they have a copy, and they opened it up in a hex editor, and they found that there is actually an unused executable called Test App, which is the cracked version of the game that Rockstar was initially using. So the game actually still contains the cracked version of the executable. It's just not what's accessed. I'm assuming you could like rename some files in the folders and have it run there, but that's not what's accessed if you just hit play by default on Steam if you own Midnight Club 2. Which is really funny. Apparently also Midnight Club 2 had some like crashing issues on Windows Vista, and Silent continues, this explains the myth of the retail Midnight Club 2 crashing on Vista. The game is most likely innocent, as the demo works great out of the box. It was again the crack breaking it. This gets better. Razor's crack is fine. So the crack itself is fine. The reason both Midnight Club 2 and Manhunt crashed when these cracks were in use was the fact that Steam DRM included a .bind section that was code not marked as code, thus tripping data execution prevention. Or sorry, only Midnight Club 2. This .bind thing was only in Midnight Club. So essentially, the crack itself worked fine, but Steam has its own DRM, and I guess for that specific game, they just fucked up the formatting on it for maybe just the Steam release, like Steam exclusive DRM. They fucked up writing the code, which tripped a bunch of weird shit and caused it to crash. That's hilarious. Good going, Rockstar. You couldn't have taken... Again, if you go up and look up reviews for Manhunt right now on Steam, recent reviews mixed. Yeah. And all of the positive reviews are actually just people who are talking about how you need to pirate the game, including someone who has linked a patch. Yeah, just like... What the hell? Yeah, you couldn't have put in like a little bit of effort? You couldn't have put in a little bit of money for that? Come on, guys. This is why you gotta check out the PC Gaming Wiki. Anytime you play, especially an older game, go look it up on PC Gaming Wiki. I've gotten in the habit of doing this. And just look up if there's anything alarming. Like, hey, if I just look up Manhunt, retail, Securom DRM, 3 CDs for US and Europe, 1 DVD for Russia. It's interesting. And it will tell you just known issues, and I think sometimes even linked to like community patches. Yeah. Just very useful technical wiki for stuff. Yeah, mods. Yeah, no, they'll just link mod. Manhunt fixer. There you go. So that's pretty funny. Good going, Rockstar. Hey, speaking of nothing actually, because there's no smooth transition into this. The final character for Mortal Kombat 1. Oh, sorry, I have to stick to the bit. Mortal 1 Combat. I have to stick to the bit, especially if it annoys people. Was revealed. And it was, in fact, Nitara, who it was, I think, teased to be, theorized to be, maybe even leaked. And I was like, oh, Nitara, you know, that's a character I could see. Excuse me, I've talked about it before, but like, a lot of 3D era characters... There's a lot of them that I think could benefit from just getting another shot at them, you know, like take another crack at them, maybe have a bit more of a solid execution on their gimmick. Like, I think Ashra looks pretty cool in this game, despite not having her big hat, which was the best part of the original design. But like overall, she looks pretty cool. Serena's demon form, is really cool, and it makes up for the fact that Serena's regular design is like the worst thing ever. There's like genuinely some characters that they've done in this game. I'm like, yeah, you know what? This is a pretty alright or pretty good reimagining of the character. Nitara. Should I? Oh man, I should go back and leave a comment. That's what I get for making a big design tier list before everyone's actually been revealed for the game. This Nitara design is fine. She suffers a little bit from something that some of the other characters in this game do, which is honestly a lot of Mortal Kombat characters over the years, which is... How do I say this? It's I think I called it the beat-em-up enemy, like beat-em-up enemy syndrome, where Nitara kind of looks like just sort of like a character you'd fight in like a level of a beat-em-up. She doesn't really look like a main character, which I feel is kind of important for a fighting game. is that it has all as many characters as possible have like very strong, like every single character should be every single character in a fighting game I feel like should come across as the main character of their own story. And a lot of the Mortal Kombat designs kind of come across as being side enemies in other characters' games. At least in my opinion. But it's okay. It's neat to have Nitara back. She doesn't look horrible, which is nice. She doesn't... The wings look a little better. They look a little less like they're just sort of stapled onto her back, like they kind of did in the 3D era games that I was never really a fan of that look. But the more important thing is that it's not the character, it's who she's voiced by. Remember back in MK11 where they were like, hey, you know Sonya Blade? Or I guess Sonya Cage now. You know how she's had this voice actress in like the last 2 games and probably even like the animated films that they would do. What if we just replaced her with Ronda Rousey? You remember that? What if we just replaced her with widely hated MMA star Ronda Rousey? And why? I don't know. This is sort of, well, WB really likes doing this. They really like including like professional wrestlers and fighter people in honestly just athletes. Yeah, that is a really, like, Space Jam? Yeah. And then I'm also thinking about like all the weird WWE collaborations they've done with like John Cena and stuff like that in the Scooby-Doo movie. There's like 2 fucking WWE Scooby-Doo movies. So they just like doing this, I suppose. And Ronda Rousey as Sonya is like a notably awful performance. Like, I don't even know if she had any on screen. Oh yes, sorry, she was in Ronda Rousey was in Furious 7. She shows up, she fights I believe Michelle Rodriguez, because you have to have a girl fight. You can't have a woman fighting a man. You have to have 2 women fight each other. So Michelle Rodriguez, I think, fights Ronda Rousey. And I remember thinking about that, like, I didn't recognize that it was her at first, because I'm just not, I can't say that I'm the biggest Rousey fan, to the point where I would immediately pick her out from a crowd. But I was like, that's so weird that they're in like, where are they? Oh, why can't I remember the city name? It's that scene where they jump out of, they drive the car out of the window. Furious 7 building jump scene. Can you just tell me where it's from? Dubai. Pfft, I'm so stupid. In the Etihad Towers. When they're in Dubai and it's all like, and then just suddenly there's not many, white people there. And then suddenly Ronda Rousey, and she's just sort of like a sub boss that Michelle Rodriguez has to fight. I don't think she has any lines of dialogue, and then she loses, and then she's never in the film again. So that's like, as far as I could tell, the only. Has she done any other acting? Maybe. They would later have John Cena in the fucking Fast and Furious movies, in Fast 9 and Fast X. So that was honestly way... No, I don't want to go into a whole side tangent about Fast and Furious again. But anyway, yeah. So when you go look up... I think there's a compilation called Ronda Rousey's Worst Line Readings in MK11. Go look it up. It's hilarious. And it's like, when you listen to them in isolation, they're not great. And then when you hear them next to the actual voice actors, like the actual professional voice actors who are good at their jobs, it gets so much worse. Like, you really realize how much you've taken for granted good voice acting in video games over the last, 10 years. It is very commendable how much higher the standard is for voice acting now compared to even, the 7th gen, to be honest. So I guess this is just a thing now where they want to have a celebrity voice in one of the roles, and thankfully they have not gone with like a wrestler or MMA fighter this time. They've gone with an actual actress, Megan Fox. Kat was so excited about this. Kat loves Megan Fox. So there's this hilarious reveal trailer, and because it's like all of the... So the thing is, up till now, they've been doing these group reveal trailers of like, oh, all the characters from this group or this faction or this sort of theme to tie them together. They've all got a trailer together. And then there's one more character left, which implies, I think a lot of people, myself included, were assuming, oh, it's going to be some kind of villain or something. It's going to be some kind of villain, either a new one or a returning one. Shang Tsung, perhaps, right? No, he's just going to be DLC. Fuck you. He's a pre-order bonus. Fuck you. Money. I love money. Because, like, oh, who would you have as just a standalone trailer? A villain, like someone to hype it up. Like the last trailer is the villain, and oh, now you're gonna get interested in the story and all that. And then no, they were saving it for Nitara, who is, from all intents and purposes, a kind of side character, and the only reason they've saved her for last is because she's played by Megan Fox, and they wanted to have a standalone trailer where Megan Fox gives a hilarious interview about like a promo interview about how much she relates to Nitara as a character. It's so fun. There's some excellent choice quotes from that trailer. She drops a literally me. She drops a literally me about the character. She goes like, yeah, she's from this. The first thing she says is like, she's from this like weird realm, and she's like good, but she's also evil. And so it's just fucking, it's just gobbledygook. She's just saying nonsense. And she's like, I just put, it's like Mortal Kombat. It's been around since gaming was around. And okay, sure, Megan Fox. And like, it's that game, everyone played Mortal Kombat growing up. And I just, yeah, of course you gotta be. It's such a funny interview. I can't wait to have an excuse to just throw random clips and quotes from her in that promo trailer. But hey, I never even really paid attention. Let me actually look up Nitara, the Nitara trailer. Let me actually look up what her gameplay even looks like. I don't remember what she did in the other games, in the 3D games. Megan Fox is Nitara. It looks like she's like a vampire, right? Oh, there's a Jennifer's Body reference, which Kat was also really excited about because she loves Jennifer's Body. Where she clashes with Kung Lao, and Kung Lao asks, "Where's Jen's body?" And apparently Jen was the name of Kung Lao's girlfriend in Mortal Kombat Conquest, which I think was the live-action TV show, which is actually kind of an awesome pull. I actually think that's pretty funny, to get both the reference to the stupid live-action show. I want to make a video on that at some point, because I don't know if anyone has. And then also a Megan Fox reference. Like, it's tongue-in-cheek enough that it could work as both. That's fun. Show me the gameplay. They're just showing me fucking cutscene stuff. She's doing air combos. Yep. I guess she has like an aerial command grab. They always give vampires like command grab moves. Oh, she has a thing where she can like put a little circle on the ground and buff herself. Is there anything else, like, gameplay-wise? I don't know. She's just sort of doing Mortal Kombat string stuff. She has an air dash. That's neat. So there's some kind of aerial movement stuff. That's sort of neat. Yeah, that's something that you would do with Nitara in, like, a 2D...
in like a 2D space. Give her like a command grab and like a little blood buff thing and all that. And yeah, you know, I'm gonna be honest. I've been watching some gameplay of this game, of Mortal Kombat. Stick to the bit. Mortal 1 Kombat. And to be honest, it looks pretty fun. I probably won't be buying it because it's going to be like $70, and I do not have that kind of cash to sling around, especially not for a game that I'm not the most hyped in the world for. But if someone wanted to like play it with me, like I went over to someone's house or something and they had it, yeah, I can get into it. It looks just visually like the character concepts look a lot more interesting. I'm like gameplay wise, character gameplay looks a lot more interesting to me than the MK11 stuff. One issue that I sort of had with X and 11 that from the brief moments I've touched with those games is I don't like the variation system. In theory, it sounds cool. But I like it a lot because I like the moon system from Melty Blood. I think the moon system is cool from the older Melty Bloods, pre-Type Lumina. The difference between the moon system and the variations is that the moon system would often change character play styles and such, but every character kind of has a very similar. It's not too much, right? And it's really easy to just jump around and look at what's different, and not too much will be different between characters' moons. For the most part, what changes with the moon style, at least with some exceptions, is system mechanic stuff, like how your meter works and all that. The movesets can change, and they often will, and it can result in different moons for different characters being wildly, vastly different. But you can jump into like a character's moon, like one moon, and even just kind of mess around a little bit and basically understand what their deal is. For the most part. There's some where it changes up quite a bit, but you can basically understand like what they do, and then the different moves movesets kind of end up just being like different permutations of that. My problem with at least MKX in the variations is that it's like too much. There's too much variation, and it's just difficult for me. What I had to do when I went back, and I've tried a couple times to enjoy it, and I've always had to go into the training mode and pick the variationless version of a character, check out their moves, and then go back into the character select, and then, or I think you can do it from the training mode options actually, and then go and then individually look at all three of the variations to see how they actually change, and they are wildly different. And like on paper that sounds cool, but for just a casual experience like me, it's way too much information. I would much rather a character was just a single thing with maybe like a little stuff that you could customize, you know, but just like a single strong solid concept, and then they just had like a lot of tools. I would always prefer that kind of a game. Or the system mechanics themselves are really varied and interesting. Like something like SF6, right? SF6 also being a game where characters have tons of tools. And this is kind of exacerbated a lot more by MK11, where the variation system in that is so mix and match that I feel like the characters often don't have much of a strong gameplay identity at all, and it kind of makes worse this overall feeling that I've had that a lot of Mortal Kombat characters do not have solid gameplay identities from game to game, and they can change wildly. Like, Reptile plays differently in like almost every single MK, which is really strange because he's been in the series since MK2. And they've like never figured out a single play style for him. So just like, hey, if he's in the game, it's just a toss-up what he does and how he plays. And I don't know, I find that a little weird. I'm more interested. It's just more approachable for me, honestly, that there isn't like 1,000 different variations across every single character that you have to like, oh, this just got this thing, and this has this thing, and this has this move that only they have. And it's like, man, that's just a lot of shit to put up with. But yeah, Nitara, she's there. She looks interesting. Oh, apparently there's like a costume for Smoke. I'm pretty sure it's a costume for Smoke that puts him in the classic purple cyborg outfit. I saw something like that. Hang on. Mortal Kombat 1 Smoke costume? I want to say I saw some kind of cyborg. Oh, that's not. Yeah, these research results are awful because of the fucking Mortal Kombat 1. Kombat 1 costumes? I don't think he's a deal. He's not a cameo, is he? Whatever, I saw something. And it looks... The game does look decently fun. I'll give them that. It looks decently fun. It looks more fun than 11. And then, finally, we're going to be talking about an actual game that I played. That's right. The Quake 2 Remaster. So, Quake 2 has been on Steam for a while. Hey, speaking of games that... I should have followed up the Rockstar thing. Speaking of games that were just kind of hastily thrown up onto Steam with no care. Quake 2. Which, did it even function on Steam? Out of the box? I don't know. Yeah, so basically in order to play Quake 2, like, for real, for actual, you would have to download a source port, like Yamagi Quake, which is a pain in the ass to set up. To get like that, and then all of the sound files, which you had to download separately. And it was like, I remember just getting a headache trying to set up Quake 2. And then the game is Quake 2, which isn't even that good. I'm being mean. So I talked about Quake 2 a while ago. Like, man, I feel like it's in like episode 30 something that I talked about Quake 2. Back when I played it. And I have never been a super big fan of the game. I can't say that I'm a huge Quake guy. When it comes to, because I am just when it comes to these FPSs, these retro boomer shooters, I'm a single player guy. I do not play multiplayer. I mean, good luck finding a Quake 2 multiplayer lobby nowadays. I'm just interested in the single player, and I much prefer Doom in that regard. I didn't care that much. The Quake 1 single player campaign is fine. It's okay. My problems with the Quake 1 single player campaign are largely come down to I just don't like the bullet sponge enemies. It makes all the weapons feel weaker, and it makes the game feel a lot more tedious. And that was, it's not even like, it is like an intentional thing, but the reason it's there is because hardware at the time was limited to the point that it wasn't like Doom where they could throw like 50 enemies on screen at once that you could like plow you could plow through like half of them pretty quickly. In Quake, it's full 3D, baby. So they have to cut down on how many actual character models are on screen, which means that they are kind of just... They have to bulk up the actual health of the enemies. And to me, that resulted in feeling a lot more... The weapons feel a lot weaker. I already said that. More tedious. I don't prefer it. Quake 2 doesn't quite have that problem. Not nearly as much. And it's also okay to throw some more enemies at you. Quake 2's problem is that it's just kind of boring. It's fine. It's an absolutely serviceable single player. It's just okay. It's not very difficult. I mean, I think I played it on like hard or very hard, and I had no issue at all. Mind you, that was after, I'd already beaten like Blood multiple times, and I beat the game on hard and all that, and I've played Shadow Warrior. Pretty tough shooters, right? And I don't expect Quake 2 to be that difficult, like as difficult as those games. But at the same time, it's like, man, I'm just kind of... You're just sort of going through the motions for the entire game, and it ends up feeling very low impact. It's just kind of like, yeah, I'm doing this, and then I'm doing that, and then I'm doing the next thing, and then nothing's ever really... I don't even really remember anything from Quake 2. The additions that it tries to make, the innovations, are very shallow as well. Some of them, at least. There's like objectives, right? So it isn't like they were really trying something different. So, Quake was just level based, right? And then you'd advance to the next level. Quake 2 has these kinds of mega levels that are made up of smaller levels within them, with loading screen transitions when you go from one to the other. And it's the idea. So you'll get into the excuse me. You'll pop into the mission, I think is what they call it, the mission, and then there's all these little levels inside of that. And you'll get an objective, but the game is designed in such a way that you kind of just naturally complete the objectives as you play them. You don't really have to go out of your way to look for anything for the most part. You don't have to really use your head for anything. You just kind of do stuff. You kind of do what you're already doing, which is killing guys and getting items. And eventually you'll either pick up the key item, or you'll kill the enemy that you need, or you'll flip the switch that you need, which is already just like a natural part of the gameplay. And it sort of leads to... It's essentially the exact same thing as Quake, the original, or Doom, except imagine if in Doom you could hit a button and a screen would pop up that would give you the most bare bones in-universe explanation for why you're doing what you're doing in that level. And it's not very substantial. That's always kind of been my complaints with Quake 2. It's just okay. Like, I finished it, and I was kind of surprised that it was over, because it didn't... The last boss just feels... I don't know, he just kind of goes by. And for a game that was so difficult to set up... didn't leave much of an impression on me. It feels like a tech demo. It feels like a tech demo in a lot of ways. It had that epic colored lighting that ruined Daikatana, that fucked up Daikatana. That's a different story. Although I love telling it. So, the Quake 2 remaster gets announced, and I wanted to go check it out because it has a new episode. It's got a new episode, Realm of the Machine. And I was like, oh shit. Is that like by Machine Games? Because Machine Games, the Wolfenstein guys, the new Wolfenstein guys, also did the Quake 1 remaster, which I had a great time with. The Quake 1 remaster included a new expansion called Dimension of the Machine, which is, in my opinion, like peak Quake single player. Like, Dimension of the Machine fucking rules, and it's honestly worth getting the game just for that. If you buy the remaster, you get a ton of content, because it also comes with the 2 official expansions that I also played. And those are pretty... I actually like... I, again, prefer those to the base game. So I was pretty excited to play the new Machine Games level pack. Megawad isn't really applicable here because it's not what it is, but you know what I mean. The new expansion that they put together for Quake 2. It also, the Quake 2 remaster also comes with the two or three official expansions that were released previously, which I have not played, but I might actually go back and play them now. So first of all, the benefits of the remaster is, number one, the game just works out of the box. You don't have to install a source port that you have to run separately. You can just download it on Steam and click play, and it works. It has lots of modern features and options. It runs very smoothly. Lots of customization features. Really just solid all-around remake. It looks good. It plays good. And so most of this is just going to be talking about... I didn't replay the base game because I just don't want to go through that again. But I played through Realm of the Machine. It's really good. It is really good. I don't know if I like it as much as Dimension of the Machine. It doesn't have quite the same atmosphere, consistent atmosphere, as Dimension of the Machine did. I think Dimension of the Machine is fucking gorgeous. It is beautiful and intricate and just fascinating to look at so many of the levels there. Realm of the Machine is really good, and there's a couple levels that I think are fantastic. It's about 7 levels, and it's like six that you pick in any order. You've got the sort of hub area, which is sort of neat. Also, how Dimension of the Machine worked. You've got this hub area, and you can go around. You've got to complete all of them at some point, Mega Man style. And once you finish that, you open up the portal to the last level. Pretty simple stuff. But a lot of these levels, they look really good. They look good. They have really just solid design. I rarely felt lost. Also, apparently, Quake has a compass, which I never knew. Quake 2 has a compass. I never knew that was in the game because I never had to use it. A lot of really actually pretty challenging. I played on very hard, and I had a decent challenge with this expansion. It's not afraid to throw like a bunch of enemies at you and be kind of mean. I like it when games are mean to me because I'm kinky like that. I'm a naughty little vixen, and I like hit scan enemies. And there's some very memorable segments where the game just like drops a bunch of dudes on you, and it's extremely hectic, and it's good. It's really good. Just really solid overall level design. There's a couple standouts. There's at least 2 standout levels. Corpse Run, awesome level. I saved that for last I don't know, I just did them in kind of like a random order. And that one was the last one I played, and man, that one's fucking cool. That is there's some great references to the original game that I don't exactly want to spoil, but things that had me going, oh shit, that's cool. Honestly, just play it for yourself. It reminds me, it at least allows me to appreciate the good parts of Quake 2. I think Quake 2, I would say the main game, having played Realm of the Machine, it gives me some good perspective, because Quake 2, it's like, man, this game does feel really good. Running around and jumping and shooting, it feels good. The super shotgun, it's a good super shotgun. It's a good double barrel. The chain gun in this game is fucking insane. I always forget just how many bullets it shoots. Holy crap. It is... Just go look up like a video of someone using the chain gun in Quake 2. I can't think of a weapon in any other game that shoots that many bullets that fast. It just chews through ammo, and it feels awesome. It feels great to just tear through enemies with it. The sound effect is awesome. It's so good. Just such an excessive, ridiculous weapon. A lot of things in the like the railgun feels good to use. The rockets feel good. The grenade launcher is fun. A lot of really solid weapon design. There's a lot of weapons. I think there's too many weapons in the game. They had like a few too many ideas for weapons, and it kind of ends up getting a little cluttered and cramped. One of the things that I don't really like that much about the original Quake is I feel like there's a little too much overlap in the arsenal, where it's like, okay, do you need 2 shotguns and 2 bullet weapons? Do you need to have, the nail gun and the super nail gun? Do you need like 2 of those? Because you could have just condensed those down to just being 2 weapons. You get really spoiled when you play Blood, and Blood just hands you a really good double barrel shotgun that you can use as if it's a single barrel shotgun whenever you want. That spoils you a lot. Go play Blood. It's great. Quake 2 has a very good amount of variety in its weapons, and I actually found myself in this expansion flipping through them pretty often. With the exception of once you get the chain gun, the machine gun, which is the basic, like the first, it's like the weaker bullet weapon. Biz used. I never used it. I never used it at all. It's like pointless. And I also never really used the regular shotgun, which is also, I don't know, it's always kind of been a problem with these games of like having these direct upgrades, but also you just keep the original weapon. Okay, like why would I use it? I guess to conserve ammo or something. But yeah, it's besides that, there's enough weapons like, okay, yeah, I used the shotgun, I used the chain gun, I used the what else is in this game? There's like essentially this game's version of the plasma rifle. What is it called? It's called like the mega pistol or something like that. The rocket launcher, the grenade launcher, which are good in like different situations. There's these mines that you can throw down called like Tesla that I never really used. There's a couple different super weapons. There's like a laser beam. There's the BFG 10,000, which is, it feels really good. Just kind of fry everything in a room. There's also something, what is it called? Like the evaporator or something like that. And it's like a single target, super high damage weapon. And it's neat. You get it in a few levels. It feels like, yeah, it's a little much. It's a little cluttered. But overall, I think the arsenal is pretty solid. The one thing I don't like is the amount of recovery time, or like reload time, I suppose, to not use a stupid fighting game term, in between shots. Like, a lot of everything has some kind of wind down period. And it makes sense for like the shotgun, you know. It makes sense for the shotgun. But like the minigun, or the chain gun, whatever the fuck they call it, has this whole wind down period before you can use it again. And it has a spin up period before it hits full speed. The rocket launcher actually doesn't have too much wait time in between. The mega, whatever, the plasma rifle equivalent in this game, I can't remember the name. It has some goofy name. Has a weird spin down time in it, which I guess the original plasma rifle also did, but that was in a game where that was like the exception. It was like that, and in Doom, what even has like a cooldown period? The super shotgun, the plasma rifle, and the BFG. And all of three of those make sense. And they're also like a contrast to the other weapons which don't have that. The chain gun, no cooldown. The rocket launcher, no cooldown. The pistol, no real cooldown. And then in Quake too, yeah, like there wasn't, the shotgun I guess had a little bit of time in between shots, but other than that, it was like pretty, you just kind of like fire away. So you kind of have to design the game a little bit differently, and I don't know, you have to play a little bit more. I guess you could say it adds a strategic layer, but I don't know if it's not a strategic layer that I enjoy too much, because it feels just kind of like, well, I can't do the thing that I want to do right now in this fast-paced action shooter game. I can't just like shoot the gun that I want right now because I'm still in like the 30 frames of recovery from my gun like reloading or whatever. The railgun has recovery, just like everything has recovery on it, and I'm not a fan of it. Maybe I just need to get good, but not super into it. But I don't know, like other than that, the game does feel really good. It's a nice feeling game to play. I mean, it's id. they're known for knocking it out of the park with this style, and the framework that they built is great. It just took, I guess, more engaging level design to bring that out, which is like, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, how many games are out there, you think, with really good combat, really good movement, really good like gameplay under those, like really like deep in there with a ton of potential that's really cool and fun, but the level design or the enemy design just does not bring out the best in it? Because that's, I think I wrote an essay forever ago about like blood and the combat in that game. And when I say combat, I mean like the whole thing. When I say combat in like a shooter, that means the weapons, the movement, the enemy design, and the level design. It's all like one thing, because it's every single component of that brings out. Every single component has to work in tandem with each other. The weapons have to be designed to with some amount of intentionality, with like, what do they do? What are special properties that they have? Like, how much cooldown do they have? How much ammo do they have? How fast do they fire? What kind of damage do they do? What kind of special properties might it have? The enemies have to be designed with the weapons in mind to be able to challenge those weapons interestingly, and then the enemies themselves have to be used in interesting ways to actually challenge those weapons. If you've ever played, that would be an interesting thing. You ever played a game that had some really good gameplay and that just never really required you to tap into it? I'd be curious to hear about it. Like, what game failed its own combat system? What game let it down the most? But the Quake 2 Remaster, overall, good. If you own the game on Steam before, it's just an update to the game, so you don't have to buy it separately. It's not a new thing. It's just an update for the original Quake 2 port. And you can play, if you choose, you can play the original, just like executable. You don't have to play the remaster version. You can change that in the launch options if you really want to. If you're a freak and you really want to, or some kind of historical purpose, which is good, you can keep that. So yeah, I would go check it out. How much is it on Steam even? How much is this bad boy going for? Oh, it's $10. It's a little pricey. A little pricey. Losey left a comment last time about how I need to play Quake 4. And that's true. I do need to play Quake 4 at some point. I'll wishlist it in case it goes on sale, because it's like $15 and I don't want to pay $15 for it. I'm just going to be honest. Well, I think with that being said, I think I'm going to call it to a close here. If you've been listening so far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Thanks, everyone, if you checked out the most recent video on arcades. Thank you for doing all the supporting. Check out my Patreon, I guess, where you can get access to scripts and notes and exclusive commentary tracks where I comment over the videos and I talk about them and stuff like that. I just posted the one for the most recent video like yesterday, so go check all that stuff out. I got nothing else to say. Goodbye.